They are a nickel defense. They do not want to take Cooper DeJean off the field. The flip side of that is the Chiefs were one of the highest percentage multiple tight end offenses in the NFL.
You're tuned in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Guiding your gridiron journey, none other than your host, former NFL lineman, Ross Tucker.
Oh, yeah, it is. But it's not just any Ross Tucker Football Podcast. It is a Monster Monday of Super Bowl week 2025. We'll get Greg Cosell in a little bit because I'm going to have a bunch of guests the rest of the week, including a bunch of players, hopefully, that Jack and I can record at Media Night tonight. So wanted to get a preview to kick this thing off before we have different guests for the rest of the week. Absolutely love talking to Greg. He's presented by Smirnoff, the world's #1 vodka. Please drink responsibly.
The Big Show.
I'm not going to lie, Greg, this is always kind of a bittersweet day for me because, and not just me, but all the listeners, all the people that watch us, youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL, because it's the last time we've got you breaking down the tape, previewing a game for a long time. Although, and I want to make sure everybody knows this, we don't go away when the season ends. People are always like, what do you guys do when the season ends? The show goes on. We still do Even Money podcast once a week and Fantasy Feast, College Draft, which is obviously huge leading up to the NFL Draft. But Greg doesn't go anywhere. You know, this is all Greg does. Greg has no life, and I love it. This is all Greg does. We talk about football every week regardless. We'll start next week. We'll obviously talk about the Super Bowl and get Greg's breakdown of what happened in the Super Bowl. Then after that, we get right into the quarterbacks for the NFL Draft. I mean, we start to dive right into that. Greg starts to do his work for that. He loves it. He's all over it. You can check him out on social media at Greg Cosell. But we may only be 3 days a week in the offseason, but Greg is still one of those 3 days here on the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. And I love doing the pre-draft series with him. I think it's awesome to get his breakdown of the prospects, which we're only, I guess, a couple weeks away from that. But we do have a big game, Greg, on Sunday. It's a rematch of the Super Bowl a couple years ago. Eagles and the Chiefs. I guess, I don't know. Let's start with when the Eagles have the football and kind of what you're going to be looking at there. Yeah. Well, when Philly has the ball and the Chiefs are on defense.
You know, it's funny, and I'll get to that in 1 sec. I just want to say, I was thinking about this Super Bowl 2 years ago, and think about this. The Eagles' first possession, the first play was a handoff to Miles Sanders. He was the back then. And the next 6 plays were called passes. That was their first possession in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. My guess is you won't see that this time, right? Right, Ross? You're not going to see 1 handoff and 6 passes. I don't think. Maybe I'm wrong. But anyway, this is a fascinating side of the ball to me because we know what the Eagles' offense is, okay? It starts with Barkley. Their run game is really multiple. It's really diverse. The Hurts factor in the run game is big. He'll be another 2 weeks removed from an injury. He'll be fine. So every time he's in the gun, which is most of the time, a high percentage of the time, maybe 97, 98% of the time, if not more, and Barkley is offset next to him, you always have the zone read element, so you have to account for that as a defense, and you, in terms of alignment and in terms of assignment, you know this. So I'm very curious to see, and I don't know the answer to this, how Steve Spagnuolo addresses that, because they've got a really good defense. One player who's a wild card for them, and he doesn't necessarily play, 70, 80% of the snaps, but Leo Chenal is a fascinating player in this matchup because he's kind of a combination stack backer and on-the-ball defender. And when they are in base defense, he plays. And he's kind of a wild card. So it'll be interesting. And, of course, that relates to how much 11 personnel versus 12 personnel the Eagles will be. And they can be in either one, and they're very effective either way. But it's their run game. This is not profound, but I want to get to the pass game point. It's the run game that sets the pass game up. And I don't mean just in terms of the way people think about conventional play action. I'm talking just how many times do we see Goddard release into the flat freely, which is not conventional play action the way people think about it, but it's just what they do. And they've started to really be effective with motion. And that has really been a big factor in the run game in particular, Ross, because what it's done is it's removed run support from the area in which they want to run the ball. Okay, so that's a big, big deal. It almost reminds me going back years and years and years for people who remember when Joe Gibbs used a ton of motion with the Washington Redskins in the 80s, and it was meant for the run game. It was meant to minimize run support, not for the pass game. And the other thing the Eagles do really, really well, and Spags is going to, he'll have a plan, is they're a really good no-huddle offense. And they run no-huddle almost exclusively on first down, some on second down, almost never on third down, but it's a big part of their first down offense, particularly when they get a first down. They get right up and they run no-huddle.
Couple of different
I know there's a lot
there,
but it was stream of consciousness.
No, that was great. A couple things that stand out to me. It really is fascinating that Hurts played awesome in the Super Bowl 2 years ago and they still lost. I mean, that would be concerning to me if I were an Eagles fan.
Yeah.
That Hurts played that well and they still lost. I want to get your take on this, though, Greg. I have John Daigle on the Fantasy Feast podcast. He does a terrific job. He had 2 stats I thought were really interesting. Mixon, I think, had maybe 85 yards on 18 carries against the Chiefs a couple weeks ago. James Cook had 88 yards on like 15 carries in the AFC Championship game. So, and then they've allowed 4 straight quarterbacks, which I thought was wild, to rush for 39 yards or more. So that's, who'd they play in Week 17?
Was it
Steelers?
I know they played the.
Was it Russell Wilson? Christmas? Yeah, I think it was Russell Wilson Christmas.
Yes.
And then Bo Nix, that didn't really count because they didn't have their starters out there.
Yeah.
But then both Stroud and Josh Allen, too. So I'm curious, let's talk Chiefs run defense. I don't know if you put it all in one category or if we need to separate it between running backs being pretty decently effective in Mixon and Cook, as well as quarterbacks, 4 straight having nice days on the ground.
Well, those running backs, for the most part, like for instance that Bills third quarter touchdown drive in the AFC Championship game, that came almost exclusively out of 11 personnel. The 33-yarder on the second play of the drive came out of 6-0 line, which the Eagles will not likely do, but the rest of it came out of 11 personnel versus the Chiefs nickel, and they play Chamari Connor at slot corner. Just as an aside, McDuffie has been purely an outside corner over the last month of the season. Connor is their slot corner hybrid, big nickel safety. So I think that the same when the Bengals ran against them, it was 11 personnel predominantly. So I don't know if the Eagles look at that and feel like, hey, we want to run out of 11 personnel and we get Connor, the slot corner, the hybrid safety on the field, as opposed to maybe Chenal on the field. Because I think Chenal is a really fascinating player, but you can get him off the field. He does not play in their nickel for the most part. Every once in a while he does, but for the most part he doesn't. So that again, we don't know what's going to happen, but I think that's one of the intriguing elements of this game is what personnel package the Eagles deploy to run the football.
Yeah, and that would be, if I'm a Chiefs fan, that's probably my biggest concern. If Mixon and Cook are having good days, what kind of day is Saquon going to have? And if Stroud is running for over 40 yards, then what's Hurts going to do when there's more potentially quarterback design runs? What about when they do throw it, Greg? You mentioned last week Hurts does not like to work the middle of the field. They do more on the outside. I've been impressed in recent years by the Chiefs' coverage, whether it's been L'Jarius Sneed or McDuffie or whoever, Jalen Watson, those guys have stepped it up, but obviously the Eagles have some pretty good weapons.
Yeah, so what I think now is it comes down to formations and motions and things of that nature. Because the one thing you don't want to do against the Chiefs, not that the Eagles receivers can't win, that's not my point, but Spags is a press corner kind of coach. So if you just line up static with your receivers with splits from in the formation, kind of plus splits, they're going to line up and they're going to play press. And like I said, that doesn't mean Brown or Smith can't win, but so I think it's going to come down to formations. I think you're going to see more bunch, more stacks, more tight formations, more motion. Try to get them away from playing press. And I think that is absolutely something you'll see. I think you'll see some design movement by Hurts instead of straight drop back type stuff, when he's in the gun. So there's ways to get them away from playing press. And I think you're definitely going to see that because that's what Spags wants to do. He's a big believer in press. He does not want to give receivers free access. That's another part of the chess match that we don't know the answers to any of these questions, Ross. All we can do is based on what we have up to this point and how the teams have played. But the Eagles are not going, in my view anyway, not just going to allow them to line up and press, and Spags is going to know that as well, so he'll have some kind of response to that as well. So, but that to me is a big part of this game.
Question for you, Greg. I know it's a combination of a bunch of things, but when we watch so many games where Hurts holds on to the ball,
Yep,
doesn't see anybody, takes sacks or whatever, and then a game like the Commanders where ball's out, accurate, has a terrific game. How much of that is Hurts just playing better versus the Commanders' defense isn't as good or they didn't scheme it up as well versus Kellen Moore, who we talked about last week, had a really – I know it's a combination of all of those, but I get this asked from fans all the time, like, why doesn't Hurts always look like that? Like how can he look so different week to week like he does at times?
Well, I thought, as I mentioned last week, I thought Kellen Moore really did a great job scheming it up in this particular game, in the NFC Championship game, and I think that's the way they have to play because there's certain things that Hurts doesn't do particularly well, which they know and everybody knows. He's not a great window thrower versus zone coverage in the middle of the field. He's not a great anticipation thrower in the middle of the field. So what you try to do is you try to work outside the numbers and you try to define the reads and the throws, by NFL standards, relatively easy. And you do that through all kinds of schematics. You do it through formation. You do it through motions. You do it through actions in the backfield. When you have a Barkley, everybody's focused on that. So that's the way you try to do it. And sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. Personally, I'm not in their meetings, but I would bet that when fans who probably get very frustrated when they see Jalen Hurts run out to his right and throw the ball away, my guess is I would bet the Eagles, maybe they're not thrilled with it, but they're not unhappy either, Ross, because like I said, he does not turn the ball over, and it works within the context of their offense. And that's critical, the context of their whole team, because they'd rather punt the ball and make the team go, the opposing offense have to go 80 yards, which is hard to do against Vic Fangio, than have Jalen Hurts maybe try to force a throw, unless the game dictates it in the fourth quarter, in situational football. But, this is the way they play. They don't turn it over, and they're kind of a risk-free passing game.
I'll take him rolling to the right and throwing it away over an interception or a sack any day of the week.
Without question.
That's the last question, though. On the one hand, Greg, I would think maybe just rush 4, keep him in the pocket because he has a tendency to hold on to the ball and take sacks. But on the other hand, you can also get him with pressure sometimes. I don't think they're as good without Kelsey at identifying where blitzes are coming from and picking them up. You and I both know you can't do the same thing every time. It's not it's always got to be a combination.
Right.
What would you major in? Would you major in pressure because he doesn't see it sometimes and you can get sacks? Or would you major in coverage and him holding it and then you get the sack after 3.5 seconds?
Well, it's funny you say that, and you would certainly know better about Juergens than I would, having, played. But I would say that Spags doesn't major in pressure. He's situational, and he's the best in the league. Like, And he uses defensive backs as pressure players. Like for instance, during the regular season, only the Bucks had a higher percentage of using DBs as pressure players than the Chiefs. And as you know, that's hard for offensive linemen. You've got your hand in the ground. You've got a certain field of vision. It's hard to see defensive backs. Plus, the other thing that Spags is really good at is he's really good at the defensive backs coming up late, where the play clock's winding down, and it's tough to make a protection adjustment when there's 3 seconds on the play clock. You know that. You can't do it. And that's why I think no huddle, and I mentioned this in my sort of stream of consciousness on your first question, I think no huddle is going to be an important factor in this game, because you're going to want the Chiefs to have to show their hand. Now, Spags will know that too, so they'll have some kind of counter, but it's still hard to do a ton of pre-snap movement and adjustment in no huddle, because you don't know when the ball's going to be snapped. So that, to me, is a really cool part of this matchup.
On the other side, when the Chiefs have the ball, I felt like we talked about this on some level. Fangio very much has a philosophy of a lot of too high safeties and not giving up explosive plays, which is interesting because the Chiefs don't get explosive plays anyway, which you already mentioned. We also talked about Travis Kelce and the fact that Zach Ertz kind of ate the Eagles up in the NFC Championship game. You feel like they'll have a different plan for Kelce than they did for Ertz.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean Kelce won't have a good game. I don't want people to think that I'm saying they're going to just shut Kelce down. He could go off no matter who's playing him, but it won't be the same plan as they had versus Zach Ertz and the Commanders. Up to this point, here's what we know about the Chiefs offense this year. Up to this point, hey, Super Bowl Sunday could be different. You never know. But up to this point, they've not been an explosive offense. Mahomes has far and away the worst completion percentage of any quarterback in the NFL on balls thrown 20 yards or more from the line of scrimmage. He only completed 26%, so he's the worst in the NFL. Their offense is built on converting on third downs. They do that a number of different ways. They're phenomenal schematically, and you've got the Mahomes factor with his legs. And they've become, as the season has progressed, much, much better in the red zone. So that's what they have been up to this point. It's red zone and third down, and they are really good on third down. So that's, to me, is a fascinating thing. Now, the other point here, the Eagles have clearly evolved into being a nickel defense. I think they played nickel on all but 4 snaps against the Commanders, okay? They are a nickel defense. They do not want to take Cooper DeJean off the field. The flip side of that is the Chiefs were one of the highest percentage multiple tight end offenses in the NFL, playing 2 and 3 tight ends. So what gives? Do the Eagles stay nickel because that's what they are, and because Kelce's essentially a receiver more than in a sense a pure tight end? Or are there times where they take DeJean off the field and go with that 5-2 front that they play? I think that's another interesting part of this game. And again, we don't know the answer to it. My guess is they will not take DeJean off the field very much at all.
That's such a good point. So let's say they go with a lot of 12 personnel. And let's say it's Noah Gray. And
Gray's not a stiff, by the way.
No, not at all. So do you think, Greg, they do that and and if the Eagles stay in nickel with DeJean, I mean, the advantage there then is if you run it. Do you think they really think that in 12 personnel, if the Eagles stay in nickel, that they can run it at the Eagles?
I don't think they're a running team in a strict sense, but I think their run game, like for instance, I thought their run game was a factor against the Bills in the AFC Championship game. It might not have been so in terms of yards if you look at the stat sheet at the end of the game, but I thought they ran it enough and well enough, they had production that it was a factor in the game. Like, I wouldn't expect Kareem Hunt to go 26 for 150. I'm not suggesting that, but I think they will attempt to run the ball. And, don't forget, they've become kind of a sustaining offense that converts on third downs. For them, a really good run play is 5 yards. That's fine. So I think their run game will be deployed meaningfully. How much of a factor it is, obviously, we don't know till the game, but I don't think they're going to come out and have Mahomes drop back 55 times. That's just my sense of watching the Chiefs play.
2 other interesting things there. They have Joe Tooney
That
at
was
left
going to be my
tackle
next point.
and Caliendo at left guard. Tooney's done a terrific job. You can tell he's not a left tackle by trade out there, but
Yeah.
he's getting it done. It might not look pretty. He's getting it done.
Doesn't have to look pretty. You know that, Ross.
No, I never did. Not a single play in my whole football
It doesn't
career
have
did
to
I look pretty.
The idea is to block the guy in front of you.
And interestingly, so this is interesting too, Greg. This is a little inside football, right? You know, you'd rather have Jalen Carter working over Caliendo than Trey Smith. However, Jalen Carter, much better, much more comfortable over the right guard because he likes that right-hand club.
And that's where he's played literally on 90% of his snaps this year. Although he did have 6 snaps against the left guard against the Commanders, and that was the most he's had all year. But I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think that a very unsung potential player in this game who's been phenomenal has been Milton Williams. And Milton Williams gets the one-on-ones against the left guard. And that Williams-Caliendo matchup in this game, to me, is really fascinating. The other thing, you would know this better than I, Trey Smith is a really, really good player. Will the Chiefs believe that they have to slide Humphrey to Carter, or will they let Trey Smith block him one-on-one?
I love this stuff. I mean, I love this stuff. Because here's what I was thinking. You know, if you don't slide left, then you got Milton Williams and Tooney with one-on-ones.
Right.
Against Milton Williams. Hey, Jordan Davis showed up in the NFC Championship game,
Jordan
by the
Davis
way.
had his best game of the year, and he only played 13 snaps, and he was a force in the game.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
He's better off the less he plays.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
And so you also then have Tooney one-on-one against Josh Sweat. They could put Nolan Smith over there who can really roll. But then if you slide to them to help them, then you do have I think you gotta have faith that Trey Smith can block Jalen Carter one-on-one. That's not easy, but Trey Smith's about to become the highest paid guard in NFL history. He's gonna be a free agent.
Yeah.
I bet you the Titans give him $22 million a year. He might have to win. He might have to win against Carter.
We don't know how Andy Reid and is Andy Heck the O-line coach there? And he's a really good one, as you well know. So, you know, they may feel like, hey, let's see how Trey does it. I mean, he's a great player. What
about Greg? What do you think Fangio does with Mahomes' legs? Last question.
Well, he's not normally a spy guy. So, you know, and it's obviously situational. So that's a great question. I don't have a great answer for that, and I'm being honest. I mean, look, I think he'll try to have a controlled rush, but I also don't think he wants it to be a total mush rush where they don't rush the quarterback at all. You know, I don't think he wants to do that. Just my sense, you know. But he hasn't spied a whole lot. But again, now that you have 2 weeks and it's a Super Bowl and you can put some new things in, could he do that? I think you're going to see a lot of 4-man sim pressures, and I'll tell you why I say that. And then, you know, I know we're near the end, is one of the reasons you do sim pressures, it's an unconventional 4-man rush, and the hope is it forces the offense to keep the back in to protect. You're not necessarily looking for a sack. You're looking to reduce the number of eligibles by 1. That's what you're trying to do. An unconventional rush so you can keep conventional coverage concepts behind it because you still have 7 in coverage. So I think you'll see a lot more sim pressure concepts, and what that does is it gets a better athlete involved if Mahomes moves, because it would be Burks or Bond.
He's the best in the business, has been for a long time. Follow him on social media at Greg Cosell so you know what he's up to. Greg, fantastic work. Can't wait to break down the game with you next week.
Thanks, Ross. That was awesome.
You know, interestingly, Jack, the tickets aren't that bad for the Super Bowl right now. Maybe because the Chiefs go every year or the Eagles went a couple years ago. But I'm looking on the Game Time app, which you know is my go-to app for tickets for concerts, comedy shows, whatever. You can get in for a little over $3,000, which is pretty unbelievable. You also you can get lower level seats for less than $5,000. Plus you can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Just download the Game Time app, create an account, use code Ross. You'll get $20 off that first purchase. So terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code ROSS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. I think you guys would be amazed. Like college hoops or hockey or NBA, you can get some great deals. lowest price guarantee, see the all-in pricing, see the view from your seat. It's awesome. Well, we're finally here. Super Bowl 59. My friends at Smirnoff have been advertising on the show all season. You already know they're our official vodka partner of the NFL. You already know that I love how affordable it is. They're the world's #1 vodka. You don't have to break the bank. They call that being Smirnoff extraordinary. This is the week the NFL legend and Super Bowl champ Vernon Davis is dropping those amazing hand-picked items for just $12.99. Head over to SmirnoffDrops.com to check out those upcoming drops and check out these Smirnoff extraordinary items. Go quick, they won't last long. Please drink responsibly. Smirnoff number 21 vodka, distilled from grain, 40% alcohol by volume. Smirnoff Company, New York, New York. Please, pricing is at the sole discretion of the retailer and may vary by state. Please not share with anyone under legal drinking age. Smirnoff, we do game days. The only thing better than game day predictions are the foods that come with them. Introducing Tums Fantasy Foodball Pool, brought to you by Tums, America's #1 antacid brand, and DraftKings. Turn football into foodball by building your best game day plate for a shot at winning a share of $40,000 in cash prizes. Join the Tums foodball action during this playoff season's most heartburn-inducing time. Visit DraftKings.com/Tums foodball now through February 9th to enter for free and select your game day plate before the start of each playoff round. Age and eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See terms at DraftKings.com/Tums foodball. Don't let heartburn keep you on the sidelines. Try Tums Chewy Bites with a tasty outer shell and soft center for fast relief of heartburn, acid indigestion, and upset stomach. Check out Tums Gummy Bites, featuring a soft and easy-to-chew format for fast relief of occasional heartburn, acid indigestion, sour stomach, and upset stomach. Both available at Amazon, Target, and other major retailers nationwide. Be sure to follow Tums at Tums Official on Instagram and TikTok.
Tuck's Takes.
All right, Ross, some notes around the league. The Eagles, they opened a practice window for defensive end Brandon Graham.
Not only that, but I've seen some video, and he looks pretty good out there. I mean, he's throwing that arm around with the torn tricep that's definitely not healed yet, but there's a very real chance football game ever, and he's putting it all on the line. Gosh, it would be amazing if he made a big play or they won. But he looked pretty good from the video I've seen so far. I think he's going to probably play.
Ravens kicker Justin Tucker, he was accused of inappropriate sexual behavior by 6 massage therapists.
And I think I just saw recently where that number is now up to 10. Candidly, I did not get a chance to read the entire article yet, but what I've read so far looks like pretty darn good reporting, I would say. Obviously, you know my textbook line for this, Jack. It's a horrible situation either way. Either he did it, and that's horrible, or he didn't do it, and these are false accusations, which is equally horrible. So anyway, that sounds like it'll be a while. The last thing I would say is interesting news for the Bucs, right? They denied the Jaguars from interviewing the O-line coach or the assistant O-line coach. They're still upset with Liam Cohen, like we talked about with Jordan on Friday. They did promote Josh Grizzard, former Ivy League guy, Yale guy that I know very well. He's the OC now in Tampa. Got to give a shout out to the Kelsey boys, Jack. Their show, New Heights, is amazing. Although they had cake batter ice cream on their Mount Rushmore of ice cream flavors, which really makes me reconsider things. Anyway, still a good show. You can tell I listen to it. Listen and watch New Heights wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to skip the ads, catch new episodes early, and unlock access to exclusive episodes of the show, join Wondery Plus in the Wondery app, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. Speaking of shout-outs, those guys love drinking some beer. Now, they got their own beer that they kind of drink, but I drink Labatt Blue Light because it's delicious. It's made from Buffalo. I love Buffalo people. I love Labatt Blue Light. I love living my life to the power of we. Always enjoy responsibly. A lot of beers for me this week. Labatt USA, Buffalo, New York. Other than that, I think we're done here.
Thanks Thanks for tuning in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Make sure to also check out Even Money, Fantasy Feast, and College Draft, all on the DraftKings Network on Samsung TV Plus, YouTube, or subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.
Shout out myfrontpagestory.com. It's officially February. It's officially Valentine's Day season. It's officially time for you to go to myfrontpagestory.com so I can get you a signed autograph and you can get the greatest Valentine's Day gift for your loved one, your significant other that you've ever gotten them. myfrontpagestory.com. Backofficescheduler.com, humanheadnyc.com, Sporticulture, Pizza Boy Brewing.